Hello. In this tutorial, I'm going to explain how to create a database table. In the previous session, we have seen how to create a schema. So we created a file called HDB schema inside which we just given the schema name as sum C5195137 underscore exercise. So now that our schema has been developed, we will have a look at how to create some of the development objects which fit into the schema. So in this particular exercise, we will create a database table. So to create the database, it can be created by two methods. So earlier there was a separate file for the purpose of creating the table known as with the file extension .hdb table. Now in the new approach, there is one more file extension which has been provided to create all the database object collectively together, which is .hdb dd. So we will see how to create the table using this .hdb file later on. So now we can see how to create the table using this extension .hdb table, that is the older approach. So the reason why SAP came up with the new approach .hdbdd is that inside these .hdbdd files you can actually create the data elements, structures, views, tables, sequences, and so on. So whatever is the database object which you wanted to create, you can group them all together inside one particular file. Earlier, for creating each and everything, we had a separate file and each of them has their own extension. So now we will see how to create the database table using this HDB table file extension. So I'm right clicking on the project which we have created earlier, and in the same project I'm going to create a file which I'm going to call it as an whatever is the name which you are going to provide over here, that is the name of the table. So I just wanted to give the table name as demo underscore table. So now this demo underscore table which I have given as the file name is going to be the table name as well. Then I give the extension dot hdb table. So this would have created a file demo underscore table dot hdb table, and here you can see the file format representing to the table structure. So inside this, all we have to do is we just have to give away some attributes. Say for example, there is a standard object called table which is there inside this file. To that particular file, you just have to give the information such as in which schema I have to create this table, what is the type of this table, and what are the columns we have for this table, and what are the primary keys for this particular table. So I'm going to give those information such as I'm using this table object. I'm going to give the information on schema name by adding the schema name attribute, which is I'm going to put it into this particular schema. So I copy this and I put my table into this schema. So I have given the schema name property for the table. Then next information that I'm going to give is table dot table type. So this property is basically going to determine whether the table which I'm going to create should have the row store or the column store. Now let's say I wanted to create a table which is going to have a column store structure. So I'm just going to give the table type as column store. So you don't have to pass any codes, you just have to pass column store. In case of row store, you just have to pass it as a row store. Then after that, I'm going to specify what are the columns for the table, which has to be passed as an array. Then there is one more property which I need to populate, that is table dot primary key dot primary key columns. So what are the primary keys column for this particular table? And again this property I have to pass it as an array. So inside this array I'm going to give away a multiple information. So I'm going to pass it as an object. So from the traditional object which we use in SAP UI5, here we have a slight difference. The difference is that in a normal object what we used to say is we put the curly braces and inside this we give the attribute name, and instead of equal to we will be using this colon. Then I will give some values over here. Then after that the next attribute will be separated by comma. So this information is going to be changed a little bit over here. So instead of this colon we are going to give a equal to, and instead of the comma I'm going to give semicolon to say that is the end of this particular object. Okay, so I'm going to create, like, say for example, we will create some four columns with four different data types. So first column I'm going to pass it as a first object in which I'm going to give the name property. Name is equal to column 1. Let's say I have given the name property as column 1. Then after that I'm going to give the type of data which I'm going to create. So what type of data this column should contain. So I'm giving the property SQL type is equal to, so now remember you should only give the SQL type which is supported by SAP, supported by SAP HANA. So here for this particular columns I'm going to give this data type as varchar, which is nothing but a character data type. So since this is a character data type, I need to give the length property. So before I specify the length property, I'm also going to say that whether this property can contain any null values or not. So I'm going to give this nullable property to false, and I'm going to give the length property to, say for example, 10. So I have created one column with the name property, I have given the type, and I have given the nullable and length property. So this is a character data type. Now we will go ahead and create another data type, another column in which I am going to give the name as, say for example, column 2, and I'm going to give the SQL type to be, now I wanted this column to be integer, so I give this column as integer value, and I'm saying this nullable property is equal to false, which means this column cannot have a null value. Then I close this. Then the next row, next column that I'm going to create is of data type. Let's say we will create a numeric data type. So I'm going to create another column. I'm going to give the name as, say, column 3, and the SQL type for this is going to be n var char. So this is going to be numerical character, and I'm going to say as nullable to true. And here I'm going to specify some of the properties. Since this is a character type, I have to specify the length for this particular property. So I'm giving the length property to, let's say we will keep it to 20. Then I'm going to give another property called as a default value. So since this is a nullable value, if user has not entered any value, then what is the default value it should contain. So let's say we could put some value such as default. So remember, even for the last property we have to end it with a semicolon. So this third column we have created it as a um, numeric data type, and the fourth column we will create it as a decimal 1. Then I'm going to create the fourth column, for which I'm going to give the name as column 4, and then I'm going to give some of the properties. Sorry, I given a comma over here. Then I'm going to give this SQL type for this as decimal, and I'm going to give, for since this is a decimal property, we need to give what is the length of the decimal and how many decimal characters it should support. So I'm going to give this property precision to 10, and I'm going to give the property scale to 3, which means it can have up to 3 decimal values. Right, so I have created 4 columns. So first column, second column, third column, and fourth column. Okay, so let's just verify if you have given a comma somewhere. Okay, so now for this particular property, we just have to give this PK columns information, like what are the columns that are considered as the primary key. I wanted my first column, column 1, and the second column, column 2, to be my primary key. So now we have given the information as how the table should be created. So if we go ahead and activate this particular file, then the database table would be created internally in the system. So assign the change and click on OK. Okay, the database table has been created successfully. Now we will go to the systems, and in the systems you can just open the catalog with the filter for the schema, and if you open that schema in the tables, you should be able to find the table which we have created now. And the name of the table would be created in such a way that what is the project which you have created, and in that particular project what is the file name, that is exercise 3 colon colon demo underscore table is the file name. So if you double click on this particular thing, you will be able to see the data structure. Say for example, the column 1 is of varchar type, and you can also see that system it internally convert to the format which it uses internally. So this format which you are seeing is a SQL type format. So this is the SQL data type, and this column store data type will be our ABAP data type like string, integer and fixed, right? So now if you wanted to see how to access this table, then you can just go ahead, right click on this table and say generate select statement. Then you can actually find that what is the table name that you have specified over here. So this table name would be accessed as the schema dot then the table name. So this is going to be like, this is the schema C5195137 underscore exercise. In that the table name is going to be exercise 3 colon colon demo underscore table. So this exercise 3 colon colon demo underscore table is the name of the table, and this is the name of the schema. So while you write a select condition, you will always have to specify the schema name, and in that schema which database table we are trying to access. Okay, so in the next session we will see how to load the initial data to this table. Thank you.